Night 101 of the ongoing civil unrest, whatever you want to call it, in Portland. You know, the unrest that the mayor said would just go away if you gave these people space to do their thing. Call the police back. We don't need to arrest them. And the local DA, who's far left, is like, well, I'm not going to prosecute them. They're fighting for justice. They've got one of their allies working in the government, and this is what happens. And notably, that's why I'm like, I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden, because I want someone who's actually going to do something about it. And Joe Biden's just negotiating with these people and refuses to say their name, which is really creepy. Well, the tactic now being used by the far left, they've been using it for a while, but they're escalating, is to target locals in their neighborhoods and at their homes. And I think it's sort of working. We'll see how it plays out. But already locals in Portland are complaining that they're getting tear gassed in their homes at night. I don't know if that will work the way Antifa hopes it will, or Black Lives Matter will hope it will. The general idea being that people can't complain to the cops. One local resident said he tried to talk to the police because there was tear gas in his house and they injured him. Yes, because those cops that are down there are dealing with a riot. There's fires burning in the streets, been going on for 100+ days. You can't go out and talk to them. But what do you do when you get tear gassed in your own home? That's why Antifa is going to residential neighborhoods. They're effectively using these people as human shields, but we know they have nothing but disdain for regular people. We've seen it in Rochester, where they went to the restaurant, started knocking over tables and screaming at people and throwing things. Well, they're doing that more and more. And here's where it gets funny. They did it in Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh, they stopped at like a diner. And there's outdoor patio seating, and they're screaming at people. And some lady walks up and grabs this like elderly couple's drink and starts drinking. And they're like, hey, what are you doing? And they're screaming at these old people. And then some dude like knocks glasses just off the table, shattering them. Not the most extreme thing I've ever seen, but definitely an attack on regular people. You know what? This one is kind of funny. Not necessarily funny like haha, but maybe a little bit cathartic. You see, there's a politician who's running for office in Pittsburgh named Parnell. I had him on the Timcast IRL podcast. And one of the things we talked about was that he put out an ad focused on the far left, how they're destroying statues, and that there is a war for the heart and soul of our country from these extremists. Local newspaper criticized him over it. Well, I'll tell you what, man, you better hope, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, you better hope they only go so far as to steal a drink from an elderly couple while screaming at them that they're racist and then smashing the glass in front of them, which is pretty extreme already. But you better hope it stops there, because they're marching more than once now through your community where you said Sean was wrong. One of the only politicians to actually point this out. Well, I'll tell you what, Sean isn't wrong. He's just calling it out before most people see it. And if you ignore his warning, you will get this. Night 101 of protests where residents are being tear gassed in their own homes. We've seen what happens in Portland, but you know what? We can do better, they say. We need reason and common good. Oh, you want common good with the people from outside of Portland who are coming in and attacking local residencies. Spray painting on buildings, climbing on people's property. That's what you want common ground with? Okay, I'll make a deal with you. All right, let's try and figure out where the negotiating begins. Okay, how about when they come to your neighborhood, they only spray paint F the police on every third house. Is that a good compromise? Okay. Well, how about they only spray paint F on the houses? Where do you want to draw the line? Where do you want to compromise with them? Which part? Okay, how about they only throw rocks at every we'll take half the rocks away and they won't throw them at you because we'll reduce the amount they're attacking you. Is that the compromise you want? Is that the common ground that we're supposed to find with these people? Are we supposed to negotiate with them? Do you see, there's a viral video right now. Andy No put it up. Actually, I might actually have it. Yeah, here it is. Quote, "You're setting fires in the streets," asks a black female driver tonight who was stopped by Antifa rioters in North Portland. "Get out of my way." She refuses to follow their orders. In this video, a group of white people wearing masks with a history of violence targeting black communities, looting and burning, are stopping a black woman from moving, and she accuses them of calling her a racial slur and then calls someone out by name. Now, they claim that didn't happen. No one said that. And she goes, yeah, it was this person. Okay. What do you call that? I'll tell you what I call it. I call it racism. So here's what I want to show you first. I'm not going to go through all the finer details of what's happening in Portland because you get it. But I want to show you one thing and then talk about how they're targeting regular people and how you've got these people have blinders on. They're not paying attention to what's happening. Pittsburgh Post-Gazette downplayed what was happening. Well, now it's coming to Pittsburgh. Check this out. Portland police said, look, there's a riot, blah, blah, blah. Stay safe. They're starting fires in the streets. They have a list of all the arrests made. And many of these people are from Portland. But check this out. One person, unknown residents. We've got one person, San Francisco, Oregon City, Mesa, Arizona, Sacramento, more Portland. We've got Vancouver, Washington. That's still close to Portland. And Utah. Many of the people who are arrested don't actually live in Portland. These are the tourists. These are people who come from outside of Portland to engage in violence. And people from Portland go to other areas to engage in violence. And this is the goal. A Southeast Portland resident said his home was filled with tear gas after police declared a riot on 100 consecutive night of protests in the city. The declaration was made after someone threw what authorities described as fire bombs toward the police. More than 50 people were arrested overnight. You see the video that's going viral? People play the song Footloose and the guy's jumping up and down because he bursts, his legs are on fire because he got hit with a Molotov. They're throwing Molotovs at the police. They're throwing Molotov cocktails at the police departments. They tried cementing the door shut. I think this was the East Precinct in Seattle, and then burning it down with Molotovs before fleeing. These people are psychotic, and they've been doing this for a very long time, and lots of people are dead. That's why it's funny when I see this article from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We need reason and common ground. How dare Sean Parnell, a Republican, say it's bad that violent extremists are attacking people and getting them tear gassed in their own homes? Yes, common ground. Okay, I'll tell you what. How about you only throw Molotovs on every second night of rioting? Is that the compromise? I mean, obviously you can say don't throw Molotov cocktails, but then they're just not rioting anymore. Well, that's not fair. We need common ground with these people, right? They say the events unfolded in a residential area of Southeast Portland near Ventura Park after police refused to let people march to the East Precinct. When demonstrators decided to march anyway, they were met with a line of police in the middle of Southeast Stark Street. That's when someone threw a Molotov cocktail, according to police. Yes, we've seen the videos. There's a guy on fire. A Coin 6 news crew saw at least 2 flaming objects thrown that started a fire when they hit the ground. At least one person was injured, their shoes catching fire. Yes, we've all seen this. And you hear glass shatter. It was a Molotov cocktail. Police declared a riot and deployed tear gas, which filled the neighborhood with clouds of gas. Some neighbors were caught in the crossfire between protesters and police and said tear gas leaked into their homes. One man said his home was so full of gas, his 13-year-old son and his friends were screaming inside their home, trying to wash out their eyes in the sink. I opened the door to the garage that leads to my kitchen. As soon as I opened the door, my eyes immediately started burning. The whole house is filled with tear gas, said resident Elijah Warren. I don't even know what is at the time because I don't know what's going on. Warren also said he was injured when he went outside to see what was going on. He said he was talking to an officer about the impact the gas was having on his son when another officer came up and hit him, giving him a concussion. He was actually listening to me. He was taking the time to listen oh, okay, this is a neighbor, said Warren, and the other one just hit me. He said he was hit from behind in the back of his head. Warren said it took a minute for him to realize he was bleeding from his ear and said he kept trying to explain that this was his home and he wasn't a protester. I'm screaming at them I'm not part of the protest. You guys were in my neighborhood. Warren said he needed stitches and spent several hours in the hospital overnight, but that the worst part was the impact it had on his son and his son's friend. Hearing both of them screaming, it's my son and his friend should even have to go through none of that. We were just sitting in our house. We weren't part of anything, said Warren. You see? Well, that was a mess up by the police. Cops should not have attacked some dude from behind when he was just talking to somebody. But therein lies the big problem. I've seen this play out in New York during Occupy Wall Street. It's actually a funny story. There was a court hearing for a bunch of people who got arrested early on. And one dude was was an older guy wearing a suit and he was screaming apparently. I was outside the court when this was happening, but this is what I was told by people inside. That this guy said that he went to a bodega, to get he was going to get an orange soda. And when he walked out of the store, he was inside the net where the cops had just they call it kettling, all of the protesters. And when he tried telling the police he was just buying a soda, they told him to shut up. He ended up getting arrested. And then he's in court like, I was just buying a soda. Why did I get arrested? It happens. And these extremists use this tactic on purpose to force people to join the fray. Well, you know what? The cop acted a fool, and now the cops are going to have to pay for it. This guy should not have gone to the hospital. He should not have been hit. And it's unfortunate, especially because the other cop was listening to him. But some dumb cop with bad training who didn't know what he was doing just walked up and hit him. And that's what the far left wants. They know the holes in the system. They will exploit the system, and you will end up with guys like this in the hospital, and now he's going to be mad. And he's going to say, why am I getting hit? Now, maybe these residents will understand that it was started by the far left, and the far left is coming to their neighborhoods on purpose. But this is the point. They want to shock local residents by the actions of the police. The only problem with this tactic is that often it ends up with the protesters attacking the local residents first and foremost. There's other groups that use tactics like this. They'll stage their headquarters in hospitals and schools, and you might know what I'm talking about. The point is, they want civilian human shields. They want the police to say, we can't use tear gas. Regular people are sleeping right now. That's what they want. And then when the cops just engage in their normal, crowd control behavior, they end up attacking a local resident. To be fair, I don't think any cop should walk up to anyone and club them on the back of the head if they're talking to another cop. You can just say, move along, sir, instead of hitting them. So that cop, they should get in trouble, hands down. I'm not sure we'll actually see this. I think it's fair to point out I'm for police reforms, but I think these far leftists need to be stopped first and foremost. Now let's talk about Pittsburgh. Let's talk about the Republican race. Pittsburgh cops investigate video appearing to show protesters clash with diners. Protests have erupted in major cities across the U.S., this we know. They say authorities in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, said they are investigating a newly released video that appeared to show protesters confronting outdoor diners in the city's downtown area on Saturday. One of the videos that were posted online appeared to show a man holding a megaphone calling diners at the establishment an embarrassment. Some of the diners can be seen getting up from their seats. Another protester could be seen giving an elderly couple the middle finger before someone else walks over to the pair, takes what appears to be a full glass of beer, drinks the entire glass. Another protester smashed a wine glass, more than one, mind you. They say reportedly, it's on video. You see him do it. He knocks it off the table. These old people are just sitting there confused. Some people get up and leave. This is how it starts. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't. The people of Pittsburgh, you don't want to know what's going to happen next if this is not stopped. If you keep voting in people who support this. If you get a district attorney like the one in Portland, man, maybe the warnings don't matter. Maybe they do. We'll see how this plays out. You got Sean Parnell versus Connor Land. The Democrats have actively supported these groups. These people who attacked the diners are not chanting, something like where we go, when we go. They're screaming Black Lives Matter in your faces. They're not yelling anti-capitalista. They are screaming Black Lives Matter, coming to your restaurants, smashing your glasses and taking your stuff. This is just the beginning. You don't want to see what happens when these people are emboldened because the DA won't arrest them. Pittsburgh, do you want 101 nights of violent riots like Portland? Because that's what happens in Portland when you vote for these people. The apparent protester who gave the couple the middle finger laughed during the interaction. They were chanting "No justice, no peace," and "F the police." The scene was reminiscent of the videos of Black Lives Matter protesters who screamed at people in Washington, D.C. late last month over the shooting of James Blake. Frederick Kunkel, a Washington Post staff writer, posted a video Tuesday on Twitter that showed a crowd of protesters gathering closely around a woman identified as Lauren Victor as she sat outside on a sidewalk. It was a patio restaurant. The group demanded she raise her fist in solidarity as they chanted, "White silence is violence. No justice, no peace." WTAE.com, a Pittsburgh station, reported late Sunday that authorities are looking into the video from the restaurant and another that apparently showed a man carrying a bike who was hit by a demonstrator. And this is what is this what we get from our local outlets? The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. You see, I've used one of their stories before, notably when these far left Black Lives Matter individuals were traveling through Pennsylvania on their way to D.C. and got into a shootout with locals. I'm not kidding. A shootout. No joke. And they say this. Now, I would have figured after the shootout, They'd say something like, wow, maybe we were wrong about Sean Parnell, and we really need to consider what's happening in this country. Fighting off a sneeze, forgive me. But they don't. Instead, they just carry on like normal. Here's the story they wrote. I won't read all of it. They say, in a campaign video, Mr. Parnell, who is challenging incumbent Connor Lamb, provided a bleak rendering of the national scene. The enemies of America are here on our soil, the candidate asserts, and they are trying to burn our country to the ground. Showing footage of statues being toppled, Mr. Parnell says the U.S. is a nation at war, whether we'd like to admit it or not. He says the goal of the mob is to destroy our way of life because they hate America, they hate our history, and they hate you. And he's right. That's why they attack locals. That's why they bring the fight to your homes. They don't like you. They don't like what you own. They don't like that you're eating a chicken sandwich and having a nice beer on a sunny afternoon and in a downtown area on a patio. They hate that. They push revisionist history like the 1619 Project, which we know is fake. It's absolutely fake. And we know that they say their goal is to disrupt the nuclear family. That's Black Lives Matter, a top-down national organization that has people marching through the streets across the country, attacking regular people, and no one from their organization will say anything bad about it because it's by design. So Sean Parnell steps up. He says the goal of the mob, they hate you. He also says the Democratic Party has been hijacked by communist revolutionaries. Fight with me, fight now. He's not wrong. This was my main segment, youtube.com/Timcast, yesterday. Local sheriffs, council members, mayors are ditching the Democratic Party because it's exactly what Sean Parnell was talking about. One of the few politicians to point this out. Well, you know what? You know what, Sean? Maybe the mistake you made is that you caught it early. Maybe your experience actually fighting overseas and witnessing how this starts and how this plays out and what it results in gave you insight that they cannot yet understand. And that's unfortunate, actually. The unfortunate privilege of being ahead of the market. See, these people at these news outlets are like, oh, nothing's happening. But I seem to recall the Black Lives Matter mob smashing up the front of CNN. Just the other day, they spray painted on a building, kill the press. But see, these people at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette aren't paying attention. They don't know. The problem we have with all these journalists is they're not actually inquisitive or investigating anymore. How many nights of riots do you need before you're like, maybe this dude's right. Maybe he's right. They say this is not helpful. There is a mob out there, but they're a relatively small number of people driven by emotion. An equally emotional response to them fixes nothing, builds nothing, helps no one. I completely disagree. It is not a small group of people. That's the lie, or that's the misconception. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they're not a national paper, and maybe they don't realize what's happening across this country. It is not a small group of people. 10% of the CDC wants racism to be declared a national health crisis. 10%, 1,200 people. That's a federal agency. The ideology of these people, the violence they espouse, it's probably in the hundreds of thousands actively on the ground. That is not a small group of people. I guess technically it is because we have 328 million people. But when you consider that after the extremists, you have their lackeys who push their ideology and are trying to get it implemented across the board in all our cultural institutions and governmental institutions, we got a serious problem. You see, what they won't tell you is that, say the Boston Red Sox schlopped Black Lives Matter just right on a big old banner. And the organization itself wants to, for one, disrupt the nuclear family. Many of their leaders are avowed Marxists. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but they've said it in interviews. They do not like America. And that is why they were revising our history with things like the 1619 Project. They just happen to have a militant wing. Now, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, these journalists, the editorial board, they don't actually know. They're not paying attention. Or it's possible they're actively lying to protect them. Like we see at the New York Times. Mostly peaceful protests gave way. No. The quote was, peaceful protests give way to burning buildings and looting or whatever. Oh, yes, peaceful protests. CNN. Now, there are fires raging behind me, but the protest is peaceful. Shit, no, it's not. Shut up. But they've been doing it nonstop. And it's only with the help of the press that they're able to do it. Now, there's two scenarios I think we can highlight here. The far left knows these journalists are really bad at their jobs, like really bad. Like, heaven forbid the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette actually did any research into this. Then they'd actually understand what was going on. They'd be like, maybe Sean is just a little bit ahead of, he's making a prediction of how bad things might actually get. And we should consider this because, let's think about it this way. Would you prefer if you have here's a good analogy. You ever get a crack in your windshield and you've got that little hole and your friends are like, you better get that sealed, otherwise it's going to spiderweb. And you're like, yeah, I'll do it. And then it splits and fractures the whole windshield. Oh man, that sucks, huh? That's what's going on right now. You got a guy driving the car and you're in the passenger seat saying, hey man, we should take this to the shop and get that sealed. Otherwise it's going to get worse. And then you've got the journalist in the back saying, it's a tiny little spot. It doesn't even matter. Yeah, there's a crack in the windshield. It's not even that big. It's who cares? We can do better. We don't need you hounding us about how we got to go to the mechanic or the glass shop to get it repaired. And then sure enough, time goes by and now the windshield's totally screwed. You can't use it. And you got the whole thing replaced and you no longer have a windshield. That's what's going on. The far left is that crack and we can all see it. And it's been spider webbing because of outlets like this that are ignoring it, saying, so what? Who cares? I know it's now come to our neighborhood. Will they come out now and say, we were wrong and we're sorry these old people were attacked at the patio? No, they're going to say it was just one elderly couple who had their drink stolen and wine glass smashed in front of them. It was just a couple families that were chased out of the restaurant by a screaming mob. It's not like a large group of people. Well, it was a large group of people doing it, but it's not like it's everywhere. There are two big lies right now to pay attention to. The first is that the riots aren't even widespread. They're in key areas of the city. Yes, that's always how it is. That's what a riot is. Since when was a riot literally every city block bursting into flames? The next big lie they do, and I love this one, is the 93% one. 93% of all the protests were peaceful. According to that report, they found something like 570 or 540 violent riots in 220 different locations. And they say, but you had 2,400 locations that were peaceful. Therefore, 93% was peaceful. Let's play a game. Imagine if 93% of airplanes successfully made it to their destinations. The other 7%? Imagine if 93% of your food was safe to eat. Yes, that would mean that every couple of months you would get violently ill or potentially die. Imagine if, 93% of COVID patients survived, a 7% mortality rate. That would be unacceptable to anyone. Planes must make it. I think it's like 99.99999999999% of flights make it to their destination. I think it's actually that technically around 100% of the food you eat is safe. Maybe 99.9 because sometimes you get food poisoning, but you don't die from it. And it's actually like 99.8% of people survive COVID or something like that. But they're going to tell you, we don't care about the 7% that are violent riots that are destroying everything because they're mostly peaceful. Those are the lies. Pay attention to them. And when you see outlets like this telling you to sit down and shut up and criticizing the people who are challenging them, I wonder, where are their loyalties? Like many of these news outlets, they're hiring these extremists. It's not like literally everyone throws the brick. There are a group of people on the far left who are psychotic who throw bricks. And there are a group of people on the left who are psychotic who push the ideology and lie to protect these people. Don't wait until it comes to your neighborhood to call it out. And that's why I'm appreciative of Sean Parnell. Though I don't agree with him on everything, at least he's talking about it. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all then.